recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lisa at Forefront. Thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to Introduction to Prospect Research, Finding Grants. My name is Lisa Mae Simpson. I'm the Director of Education here at Forefront. And I just want to say a few words before I hand it over to our fantastic librarian, Robin Dillow. First of all, if you're not familiar with Forefront, I want to let you know that we are the only statewide association in the U.S. that represents both grant makers and nonprofits, as well as their advisors. And our mission is to build a vibrant social impact sector for all of the people of Illinois. We do that by providing education, advocacy, research, and project management, and by mobilizing our members around campaigns that advance the sector. So just a couple of housekeeping notes before we dive into the topic of the day. First of all, there's a fairly large group of you participating, so everyone's phone line is muted to minimize the background noise and hopefully allow you to focus on the presentation. We do, however, encourage your questions, so I'm going to ask that you type those into the chat box. You may see that on the lower left-hand portion of your screen, so take a look for that now. And please type your questions there, and we'll make sure we get to them during the presentation. And now it is my great pleasure to hand this over to my colleague, Robin Dillow, who's going to introduce herself and get us started.
Thank you for joining us. As Lisa said, I'm the librarian here at Forefront. We have another part-time librarian, Marissa, who is not with us in the webinar today, but is also available to answer questions should you contact us. Feel free to ask questions at any point during our discussion, and we may answer them then or just ask you to sit tight, knowing that we'll get to them. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Today, we'd like to first touch base a little bit about Forefront, about the library, and what we do. Lisa very thoroughly gave a nice overview about Forefront and our mission and the activities in which we engage. So we'll skip that at the moment and go straight to discussing a little bit about the library. Forefront's library is a special library. We focus on resources specifically for nonprofit organizations and grant makers. We have a collection that includes print and online resources. Our print collection, which consists of books and journals, is non-circulating. So for those of you in the Chicago area who've been to the library or who plan on making a visit, those materials are accessible at the library only, but you are allowed to make some copies at no charge if you need to do that. We are adding a circulating ebook collection for members only that will be coming to you very, very soon. And again, if you're a member, you'll be able to check out those books, which focus on a number of topics in the sector, including grant writing, social media, and just other issues that can help you move forward with your work. And then we have a number of databases available on site, several of which are available to members off-site, but again, most of them have to be used here at the library, and we'll touch on those a little bit later on during our discussion. The library is also a member of Foundation Center's Funding Information Network. That means that we agreed to make their databases, including Foundation Directory Online, which we'll talk about in a little more detail today, available to the public at no charge. We also offer a core print collection that includes a number of volumes that may be of interest to you, including a book called Writing Winning Proposals. And again, if you're at the library, we would encourage you to spend a few minutes and look at those print materials. There are Foundation Center Funding Information Network partners around the state. If you go to the link that is provided for you, you can find some of those locations, including the Chicago suburbs, I believe there's a location in Quincy, there's a location in Springfield, so that even if you're not here and you want to use those resources, there are other places that you're able to do that. I always encourage people to check with those libraries first so that you know what their hours are and what their computer policy is, if you need to sign up in advance to use one of their computers, or if you can bring your own laptop and access the databases through Wi-Fi. For those of you in the area, we're open between noon and 5, Monday through Friday, and we are closed, however, on Fridays during August, but we do welcome you stopping by and getting started with your work. So in the library, we do several things. We develop the collection to support reference and research in the sector. We do research for our members. So if you're a member of Forefront or thinking about becoming a member of Forefront, you'll find that a big part of what we do, in addition to providing reference on best practices in the sector, is we actually do sort of that first level of prospect research for you, including identifying potential grant makers. We also do research for our colleagues here at Forefront, and then we help members of the public get started with their research. So for those of you who are in the Chicago area, I do want to stress that you do not have to be a member to use the library. People generally ask that, and we welcome you and encourage you to stop by. If you have any questions about our work, do feel free to ask. Otherwise, we're going to jump right in a bit and get started on prospect research and finding grants. The main resource that we use, and the main resource most of our patrons at the library use to identify grant makers, is Foundation Directory Online. So we do like to begin our discussion by reviewing different types of grant makers. So when you're using Foundation Directory Online, you'll be able to focus a little bit more on what you're looking for. So we're going to go through different grant maker types. I'll probably review these in a little bit more brief format than you'll see on the PowerPoint, but hopefully you'll get the information that you need. When we're talking about grant makers, we do have private foundations. The funding for private foundations usually comes from a single source. That might be an individual, a family, or a corporation. For private foundations, we break those down into several categories: independent or family foundations, operating foundations, or corporate foundations. Private foundations are incorporated as separate entities, just as you have to file a 990 with the IRS as a nonprofit. These grant makers, these private foundations, also have to file a 990 with the IRS, and they list the grants that they make. So when you're doing research for potential grant makers, having access to those 990s so you can see who they've funded can be very, very helpful to you. When we're discussing private foundations, they often have a general purpose or a special purpose, but when we're looking at family foundations, you might find that family members, or frequently find that family members, still are involved in some significant capacity in grant-making decisions. They may serve as officers or board members in helping to determine who will receive funding from their foundation. Operating foundations are developed to support a particular type of research or social program or a specific nonprofit, such as a school or a hospital. So if you take a look at your community, you might find that your local hospital has its own operating foundation, and you likely will find that your college has its own operating foundation as well. So operating foundations, again, are designed to support a specific activity or a specific institution. That can be important when you're trying to identify grant makers or narrow down your list of potential funders, because you'll really want to see whether or not those operating foundations are funding beyond their initial focus. And then we also have company-sponsored foundations. Again, their funding comes from a for-profit business. They generally may maintain some ties with the company. What's important to note about corporate foundations is that they are a separate entity from the company. So unlike the corporate giving program, a company-sponsored foundation is a separate entity with its own board and with its own trustees. Corporate giving programs, however, are established within a company. They still operate within the company. They are not a separate entity. They do not have a separate board of trustees. And unlike the independent or family foundations or the corporate foundations or operating foundations, they do not have to file a 990, which means they are not required to list the grants that they make. Generally, however, they do want to report out the gifts that they make because they want the community to know that they are giving back in some capacity. What it means for us, however, if we're looking for potential grant makers, is you have to probably go a little bit beyond databases like FDO and instead take a look at their website, annual reports, to really help determine who they've given funding to. And you might find that their priorities might be a little bit more fluid as key personnel and interests shift in the company. We also have public charities, and just like the private independent foundations, they also have to file a 990 with the IRS and also have to list all of the grants that they make. Generally, these organizations are broken down into public foundations that focus on issues or populations, or community foundations that fund within a specific geographic area. They engage in some tax-exempt activities and direct service, and then also engage in grant-making activities. So when you're looking for potential grant makers, it's helpful to make note of the grant maker type. Community foundations, for example, really do just fund in their area, generally speaking. We always like to say generally speaking because sometimes there are exceptions, but if you are in Chicago, it's very likely that St. Louis Community Foundation isn't going to support the work that you do because they're probably going to support the work of the St. Louis area. So when you're trying to sort through grant makers, thinking about the type of foundation can sometimes help you really narrow down those that you're going to approach a little bit more quickly than you otherwise might be able to do. So I'll just pause here for a second to see if anyone has any questions, and if not, we will just keep moving forward. And it looks like we don't. So when we're talking about prospect research, we want to think about several basic things. Why are we doing it? What are the basic steps? And what are the resources available to us to be successful? So why do we want to do prospect research? Basically, because we want to feel more prepared and more confident when we're submitting grant proposals. So it's just like anything else. You want to do your homework to make the best use of your time and increase your likelihood of success. So when you're thinking about doing prospect research and you're thinking about where to start, one thing you want to be really clear about is your mission. Really think about what you do, whose lives you impact, and what kind of change you will bring about and how you will affect that change. You also want to think about who your prospects might be. Who are your existing donors, or who are your lapsed donors? Who are people or foundation staff that you've made some sort of casual connection to? Or are you just starting out with cold research? You know, we have some members here at Forefront who every year get updated records about their existing donors because they want to stay on top of what those funders are doing, look for any changes, look for any sort of shift in their priorities. And also, if they don't receive funding, they like to look at those records in depth as well to see what might have changed that caused them to move that funder from an existing grant maker to a lapsed donor. Cold research is a little bit harder, but I would guess that that's the bulk of research that people who come to the library are doing, as they're looking for new funders and trying to just sort out who those funders might potentially be for them. So when you're doing prospect research, ultimately your goal is you're going to build a list, and basic ways to build that list is to search a database. Another basic way to build that list is to look at other organizations' websites. If there's an organization doing comparable work to what you're doing, you can take a look and see who's funding them, or search databases to do that. Once you started building that list, you also want to think about how many applications you realistically think you can fill out based on your resources and the time that you have. That can really help you prioritize your decision making in terms of expanding your prospect research or looking at potential funders in more depth, really just based on what your resources are, and that really does vary from organization to organization. You also want to narrow your list by focusing on the match. You've already thought about your mission and what you do, so you want to make sure that that's a fit with the grant maker's mission and their interests. And you want to look at the funding history. In that regard, you want to see what the average grant is, perhaps, that they're making. If a funder is primarily giving $500 grants and it's a fair amount of work, maybe that's not the best use of your time. If it's a grant maker that's giving average grants that far exceed your budget, then perhaps you need to think whether or not that's the best fit for you. And also, because many grant makers have multiple areas that they fund, sometimes just looking at the funding history to make sure that even though Illinois might be within their geographic focus, even though the population group you serve or the issue you work on might be within their interest, you want to see if they're actively funding that, or are they meeting a need that seems more prevalent at a given moment. So looking at the funding history can be very important. And then you also want to just pay close attention to any sorts of limitations or exclusions. They might be interested in what you do, they might fund where you're located, but there could be some other reason that might make it less likely that you'd be a good fit with them. And then finally, you want to make some sort of contact. And we recommend that you follow the guidelines closely. If they ask for an initial email or phone call, that's what you should do. If they ask for a letter of inquiry, don't send a full proposal. But if they ask for a full proposal, then that's what you should submit. Having said that, we always recommend, however, that if you've built your list, you've narrowed the list, and you're still not sure if you're a good fit with a potential grant maker, it's okay in almost all circumstances to reach out to those grant makers and ask for a brief phone conversation or a brief email exchange to really help determine whether or not it's a good match. And people tell us all the time that they find program officers to be really helpful if they're not sure whether or not they as a nonprofit should proceed with that grant maker. So if you're really not sure, you've looked at the fit, you've looked at the limitations, you've looked at the exclusions, just contact them and ask for a little guidance because they want you to be successful and use your time in the best way possible. So now we're just going to jump a little bit into prospect research tools. And again, if you have questions, please feel free to pose those at any time. So when we're talking about prospect research tools, we'll start by touching base on what we have at the library. For those of you who are located here in the Chicago area, of course, you're welcome to come in and use these resources. If you're a member, no matter where you're located in the state, we'll be able to use these resources for you on your behalf. As I mentioned earlier, Foundation Directory Online really is the go-to database for grant makers. With Foundation Directory Online, which is very comprehensive and updated on a regular basis, we can look for funders based on where they fund, the areas they're interested in funding, on grant size, on where they're located, on type of funding they give, and frankly on type of grant maker as well. We always encourage people, and I do want to mention this now in case I forget to do so later, that with Foundation Directory Online, you want to save that information in an electronic format, either as a PDF or you want to email that information to you directly from the system. The records from Foundation Directory Online do include live links to the Foundation's 990s. I do see, I'm going to stop here for a second. I do see that someone had a question that what if a Foundation's website specifically says not to contact them? That really is a great question, Abby, and I don't believe that's a question that anyone has asked us before. So we might have to get a little bit of advice from some of our program officers to see what they would recommend. I think we would suggest that you look at the record as a whole, make sure that they're still accepting applications, and if there's not any other contact information, you may just want to follow what their recommendations are, and that would be to contact them by email, phone, or a letter of inquiry. But that's really a great question, and we'll see if we can get additional information to expand upon that. What's really terrific about our prospect research workshops, whether in person or online, is it gives us an opportunity to find out what else we need to explore a little bit more for those of you doing this work. But until then, we would recommend that you just follow their guidelines. As I mentioned, Foundation Directory Online is the go-to place to begin work. If you are not in the Chicagoland area and you want to do work yourself, or even if you are in the Chicagoland area, please remember to go back to that link early on in the slide presentation to find other locations where you can access FDO. We also have here in the library the Catholic Funding Guide. It's a database of grant makers that have funded Catholic institutions or Catholic programs. It does not include, or it is not limited to funders that have only funded Catholic programs or Catholic institutions. So we actually find that some folks who are doing faith-based work, search Catholic Funding Guide because they know that there's a comfort level of supporting faith-based work by those grant makers, and then they take those records and pop them back in to Foundation Directory online to get a little bit more information. So that is a resource that we have available at the library. If you are a member located anywhere in Illinois and want us to search Catholic Funding Guide specifically, just ask us to do that for you. For those of you who are here, it does not allow you to save information in an electronic format, nor does it allow you to email information directly from the system. So we recommend that you open up a Google document, for example, and just do an old-fashioned copy-paste to save the information that you need. We also have a professional subscription to GuideStar. Many of you may have accessed the free version, but with our professional version of GuideStar, we can get GuideStar reports, which includes links to 990s for other nonprofit organizations. If you're interested in seeing a GuideStar report on an organization that does comparable work, you can get that. Perhaps you're interested in seeing whether or not you can find out organizations that are doing similar work within your geographic area. We can search GuideStar to generate that list for you. And I also like to mention that every now and then foundations look at GuideStar or have asked us to look at GuideStar for nonprofits that are doing a particular type of work in a geographic area. So if you don't have a profile in GuideStar or you're not updating your profile in GuideStar, you might want to think about doing that because you never know who might be looking at GuideStar for organizations to fund, whether that's a grant maker or an individual. So you might want to think about building into your to-do list, making sure you have an updated GuideStar profile. We also have another database called NOSA. I'm going to try to describe NOSA as best I can. NOSA is a quirky database that crawls the web for gifts that have been reported out on websites or online annual reports, for example. These gifts are compiled in a database that includes information about the gift. What the amount was, that's generally in a range because most gifts are reported out in a range. What the gift was for, if it was listed, was it an annual gift, was it a special appeal, a bit about the recipient organization, the name, the location, what category or rather subject area the gift supported, and who made the gift. I must stress, however, that this NOSA does not include information, contact information about the donor. So how might you use NOSA? If you want to see if you want to look for recent gifts that were made to organizations doing comparable work, you could look up that organization in NOSA. If you want to see what a local company in your area is giving, you could look that up as well. If you want to look up corporate giving programs, you could try to find a list of gifts that have been generated and listed there as well. I should tell you, however, that individual donors and company and corporate donors are listed in the same category of results, so it can be a bit cumbersome sorting that out. We do anticipate having a little bit more information online at some point within the next month or so on how to better use NOSA, how to search it. It's a little peculiar, but you know, it's the best there is. So If you're looking for local company gifts or corporate gifts, or again, want to see who's funded a particular organization, NOSA can help do that. I want to stress that Foundation Directory Online, Catholic Funding Guide, GuideStar, and NOSA are categorized by us as our prospect research databases. They are not available remotely. They are available for use only in our library. But again, if you're a member, we can search those for you, but we cannot provide remote access to members for those databases. Our members, however, do get remote access to our EBSCO databases, and anyone is welcome to use our EBSCO databases on site at the library. My guess is that someone in your organization has either recently been to school and used EBSCO databases there. EBSCO is just a vendor name. Or you've got a public library user who uses the databases available at their local library. So my guess is someone in your organization has had some experience navigating EBSCO. We like to think of EBSCO databases as supplementing your prospect research work. We have about 100 titles available in Nonprofit Organization Reference Center, including Chronicle of Philanthropy and Nonprofit World. We have a number of titles available in our regional news databases, and then we also have Business Source Corporate. Business Source Corporate includes over 10,000 market line reports. I want to stress that these reports are not about corporate giving programs, but if you're looking to find out a little bit more about a company because you want to look at their corporate giving program, you want to see what the company's SWOT analysis is, you want to see who their key employees are, you might think about a corporate, a market line report for that company. We think our EBSCO databases can be very helpful if you create your own personal account within our EBSCO databases. Basically, you need to be logged into EBSCO, then you create your own account, and you can set search alerts. So anytime a particular foundation or company or topics such as grant writing or topics such as prospect research pops up, you'll get a notice that you should log into EBSCO and read that article. Even if you're not a member, you can come to the library and when you're in EBSCO, create that account for yourself. If you are a member and you don't have login information, you would just email us at member411@myforefront.org. We also have LibGuides. These are topics that have been put together on a variety of issues, including prospect research, to help provide you with additional information as you're looking for possible grant makers. The LibGuides are accessible off-site. They're accessible to anybody. You don't need to log in to look at the LibGuides. They will include freely available resources, freely available websites. They also will include recommendations on which of our databases you should be using as you're doing prospect research, as well as books and journals that we have that could help you on those topics. But again, I do want to stress that you just need to access these guides from anywhere, and some of the material is freely available. Some of them you'll need to take a look at when you're here at the library. So we'd encourage you to bookmark this link to guides.myforefront.org for your use now or in the future. So in addition to the resources that are available here at the library, we really encourage people to think about other resources that can help you with your prospect research. We like to think that we are maybe the go-to place, the place to start, because we focus our collection on the nonprofit and philanthropic sector. But certainly your public library can have information that can benefit you as well. Again, check to see if your public library is a Foundation Center Funding Information Network partner. Some public libraries are. Your public library also will have a collection of business and newspaper databases that can provide company profiles, that can provide regional news, that you can search for particular topics or individuals or companies in. Your public library might also have specific directories or public records that can be of use to you while you're doing prospect research. Obviously, in your public library, you can have on-site access, but you'll find that you have great remote access with a library card. So if you don't have a library card to your public library, or if you haven't taken time lately to just look at the website there and see what your public library has to offer, we would encourage you to do that, because you'll find many resources that can help you, again, supplement your prospect research or take it to a new level than what you've perhaps been doing previously. We also would encourage you to think about what your local academic library has to offer as well. Some Foundation Center Funding Information Network partners are our academic library. University of Illinois at Springfield, for example, and College of DuPage. So you want to see if your local academic library is a member. They also have various business and newspaper databases that might be of help to you. Your academic library, however, may provide limited on-site and remote access, so you would need to find out what access you have to the resources at your local community college or university. Some alumni associations, however, grant remote database access to their members, so you might want to see if that's a benefit through your alumni association as well. But again, your local public library, your local academic library can really help supplement the prospect research that you do. Before we move on a little bit to Foundation Directory Online, I'm going to just explain this before we actually do a search at the end of our time. Does anyone have any questions about how you might access or use the resources at our library or at the public or academic library in your area?
And just a reminder to type those questions into the chat box now or at any time as they occur to you.
Okay, great. And again, I do want to stress that our prospect databases are not available remotely. We are unable to provide that because of the relationships with our vendors. Of all the prospect research tools I've mentioned, Foundation Directory Online really is the place to start. When you're searching Foundation Directory Online, you'll see that you can exclude grant makers that are not accepting applications. You can limit your search by geographic focus, which you'll want to do. You want to make sure that your grant maker is funding where you're located. You can search by fields of interest, which would include different subjects or population groups. And we will do a demo later to sort of show you how to do this. But when you're searching FDO, these are the very, very basic categories that you want to remember to use. Okay. So before we move on to FDO, we do like to talk about the giving landscape. I just noticed we just received our Giving USA 2016 report. So this report is published every year by the Lilly School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. The report takes a look at giving across the country. So these are national averages. So you can see that in 2015, 71% of all gifts came from individuals, 16% from foundations, 9% from bequests, and then 5% from corporate giving programs. So this slide can be helpful to remind everybody that you want to make sure that your fundraising program has a number of different aspects to it. And this, of course, is where the funding went. So about 32% of all funding went to religion or faith-based institutions or programs, and there definitely would be some overlap, perhaps, between individual giving and that area. 15% to education, 8% to health, and 3% to the environment and animals. We do have a print copy of this most recent report in our library, and we have a question about whether or not these percentages have remained steady over the last several years, and I would say that for the most part they have. I think last year I would have to look, the giving category from individuals was maybe 72%. I would have to check that, but for the most part they have remained steady. If you want to look more specifically at your geographic area or in the area that you, the issues that you work on, the population groups that you serve, we would recommend that if you're in the library, you take a look at the print copy that we have. If you're not here and want to see the print copy, you can always ask your local library to see if one is available through interlibrary loan. And sometimes, as you know, your local public library will entertain purchasing materials that might be of interest to their constituents or to their library users. So if you're not here to take a look at our print copy, definitely ask your local library if they can get one for you through interlibrary loan. And for our members, we will be making the library version available to you very soon. We just have received those files, so this is the first year, I believe, that we will have an online version of the report that we can make available to the library. So you will receive information about that as soon as we have it ready to go. We also publish every year a giving in Illinois report with Foundation Center. I believe that the report is available now as a PDF, but I don't know where it is hosted. And hopefully we can get that information to you and let you know whether or not there will be an updated PowerPoint version of that as well. We really encourage folks to take a look at this information and make sure that you share it with your board and your trustees so that they understand really what's involved with fundraising and where you fall within giving patterns. But I believe we can get that information to folks about giving in Illinois. I'm sorry that I'm not sure where it is at the moment, but we will find that out. So I do want to mention before we move on and take a live look at FDO that if you're not a member and want to find information about joining, that is on our website at myforefront.org. You can see a little join button at the top of our website, And for those of you in the area, or even those of you who are not in the area but can make a trip to Chicago, we do offer workshops on proposal writing that you might find very, very helpful. So if we don't have any questions at this point, we're going to just pop online and take hopefully a live look at Foundation directory online. This is the website that I recommended that you book a bookmark on your laptop or on your work computer. This is the, not sure what happened to. This is the access point to our LibGuides and to our A to Z list. I'm going to scroll through here. As I mentioned, we have guides on topics that might be of interest to you. I'm going to scroll down. For example, we have a guide on prospect research, finding grants. Here you'll find a presentation from Foundation Center, some books and journals that we would recommend you take a look at if you're at the library. And again, if you're not here, check with your local library to see if they can get access to publications for you through interlibrary loan if needed, or through their own library. These are databases that we would recommend that you use. We just talked about these, as well as some recommended websites that might be of value to you when you're doing prospect research. I'm going to navigate here now. We also have on this right-hand side basic information about the library, along with our hours. If we have any database disruption, we try to post that here. That doesn't happen too often, but if you're planning a trip to the library, we do know that people like to know ahead of time if for some reason a database is down. But right here, you'll see the A to Z list. I'm going to click on that, and that will take you to our list of databases. So I'm going to scroll down a bit. On this list, you will find information about our subscription databases. Here, I'm just going to go down to Foundation Directory Online Professional, which we'll take a look at in a moment. And you can see that it's a subscription database, and that access for our members and the public, for our non-members, is here only at the library. You can see that other databases, for example, are free. National Center for Charitable Statistics is a free public database. So we're adding some free resources as we find them if we think it might be helpful to you. But this is where you will find your database. For members wanting to access EBSCO remotely, you could click on any EBSCO link. You will see a different screen, however, that will ask you to first sign in with your off-site login information before taking you to this screen. But right now, I'm going to click on Foundation Directory Online. I'm going to close out this link just so I can see this a little bit better. If you're at the library, Foundation Directory Online is tied to our IP address. All you need to do is sit down and get on one of our computers or get on your own laptop, sign into the Wi-Fi, and you're good to go. Our EBSCO databases are also tied to our IP address. For NOSA, GuideStar, Catholic Funding Directory Online, you will have to ask a librarian to log you in. If you have not yet taken an opportunity to just browse Foundation Center's website, you might want to do that. They have links to a number of resources that can be of help to you through their knowledge base, free free online webinars that you can take, really, really short 10, 15-minute videos you can take a look at. So if you haven't gone to Foundation Center's website, it's probably worth your time to do so, just to see some of the resources that they have. So one of the things we love about Foundation Directory Online is that it's something we look at every day, and we periodically get notices, like right now, that tell us that they've made some changes. So hopefully the changes have not been too significant before we do searching here. We always recommend that if you're doing cold research and you're looking for grant makers, you want to start with this Search Grant Makers tab. If you want to see who's funded a particular organization that does comparable work, you can search the Grants tab and look for that organization right here using the recipient name function. We do not recommend the power search. That is Foundation Directory Online's version of Google, and it's just going to give you far, far more than you want. But for today's purposes, we'll take a look at the Grant Makers tab, because that's really what most people use when they come to the library, and it's what we use most when we're doing research for our members. So I like to start from the bottom up to touch on some key aspects. Here you can exclude grant makers that are not accepting applications. You may want to see who's funding an area, whether or not they're accepting applications, but most people are using this resource because they need funding now and they want to build a list that's most effective for them. So we suggest you just exclude the grant makers not accepting applications. If using the controlled vocabulary, which is represented by these little view index links, if that doesn't work for you, you can use a keyword search. We're going to go through some of these blue links here, and you want to think of that as though the foundation just went on a form and clicked things off on a box and said, this applies to me. Here you can see type of grant maker. This includes really the grant making categories that we discussed. Every now and then people will say they really haven't done much looking for corporate giving, so maybe they want to limit their search to a corporate giving program. Maybe they've done no work with family foundations and want to see if there are family foundations that might fund them. Family foundations I like to point out because you can limit your search to independent foundation, but it does not break it down by family foundation. Here you can see the operating foundation or the company-sponsored foundation, which is a type of private foundation. But if you really want to dig down into a family foundation, we recommend that you add family foundation, and this does not correct for spelling errors, add family foundation to the keyword search, put that in quotation marks. So if your goal is to narrow it down just to family foundations, you will want to add that to your search as a keyword. In addition to type of grant maker, you can limit the geographic focus, and you definitely want to do that. So I'm going to click on the link that takes me to a list of countries and states, and I can scroll down, and I'm going to click on Illinois. We like to recommend starting with Illinois because if you start with national, which you certainly can do, you're going to get more results of funders who fund broadly across the country, but you probably will also find funders for which there's a bit more competition. So we really recommend start with Illinois. If you need to expand your search, you can do that. Again, this is where grant makers fund. It is not where they're located. I want to just touch on support strategies. Frequently, people are just looking for funders who can fund different aspects of what they do, who can fund general operating as well as program, or they just want to see what's out there, funding their issue areas and funding the populations that they serve. But strategy support becomes really important if you're looking for something like building renovation, capacity building, capital campaigns, or some other types of categories that financial sustainability perhaps, that you really need to focus on. Otherwise, you can just choose not to use that and kind of see what works. But we definitely recommend that you use it if you're looking for buildings or capacity building or any sort of capital or infrastructure. I do want to take a moment to pause that you to see if anyone has any questions at this point. If we can see that before moving forward. Nope, so we're all good. So I'm going to keep going. I think we're good. Oh, great. I see that someone mentioned having used Illinois, giving in Illinois. So glad that you found it helpful. So we're going to go back out to FDO and continue working a little bit. In addition to geographic focus, what's really important is the field of interest, and these are the issues that grant makers fund and the population groups that they're interested in. This database allows you to do Boolean searching. The default is OR, which expands your search results, but you can change that to AND. And we use that frequently when we're trying to combine an issue area along with a population group. So I'm going to start and just do a sample search. So you saw me just type arts in this box. So how did I get there again? I clicked on the View Index link here under Field of Interest, and I can scroll down alphabet by, alphabetical list by list until I find what I'm looking for, or I can type a word or two in this box and hope it pops up. So I just typed arts in this box, and now I'm seeing what's available to me here, and I'm going to look for performing arts. Haven't done this search before. I always like to pick things that are new and exciting, because that's what happens when you really search. It's not all scripted, so we like to see what might you have to do to narrow or broaden the search. So again, I'm going to click that so you can see it one more time. I went to the box, I typed arts, I then clicked on performing arts, and it populated this box. So let's see what happens when we search. So right now we're searching for grant makers who give in Illinois. They are accepting applications because we've excluded those who are not, and they're interested in performing arts education. What are we going to get here? I have no idea. So 323 grant makers. So that's really too many to look at. Not impossible, but time is short, and so now you want to think about what you're really interested in. Maybe what you are, this is kind of, I'm going to go back here. It doesn't show that the excluded grant maker box was checked. Somehow I unchecked it, so let's do it again. Still quite a few, but a bit better. Let me point out the search result here. We really recommend that you save your search criteria. When we search for members, we record every search that we do. when you're trying to identify grant makers, you have a lot on your plate. You get incredibly busy. So knowing what you've searched already can help save you time when you need to search again or refine a search. So this is still quite a few. I could look through it, but what I really want to think about perhaps are performing arts that are for or that involve kids. So you saw me click Modify My Search. I'm going to go right back here and View Index. And now what I'm going to do is start typing children. So here I have children and youth. So this is my default search. This now is going to search for grant makers who are interested in performing arts or children and youth and that fund in Illinois and that are accepting applications. Because it had org, it really expanded my search. But what I really care about are grant makers that do both. I'm going to modify my search, capitalize it to an A and D. So now I'm looking for grant makers that care about performing arts, they're interested in children and youth, they fund in Illinois, and they're accepting applications. So let's see what happens. So this is a much more manageable number that I can look at, 61 grant makers. I want to be clear that these are not grant makers who care specifically about performing arts for children and youth, but because they care about performing arts and because they care about children and youth, then maybe they'll have a greater interest in your program that involves performing arts for children and youth. So this is your list. I like to, let's just go here. I like to right-click on records. This is really sensitive today. I didn't even realize I clicked it, but this is what it looks like. This is the overview of the record you're going to get. These are the live links to the 990s. You do not have to be logged into FDO to access these links. They're external links, but this is why you really want to save Foundation Directory Online Records in an electronic format. So here it's telling me about any limitations. Its emphasis is on Chicago. It gives to national organizations. So maybe you would want to take another look either at the 990 or if you're looking at this, search the Grants tab and see, are they giving elsewhere in Illinois or are they really just giving in Chicago? So this is where their funding history becomes important maybe to think about. So we're just going to scroll down. You can see all the subjects, and here children and youth should pop up. It pops up here in population groups. Performing arts, you can see, is here under the subjects. Tells you the support strategies, what they like to fund, and a little bit more information about the application deadline, as well as the average size grant that they give and how many grants they give as well. So if you decide this is a good fit for me, this can be emailed directly from the system. You put your email in twice along with your name, or you would save it as a PDF and then email that PDF to yourself. And basically, you just go through the records and think about what's going to work. What you can also do is take a really quick glance, and if there are community foundations on this list that are not at all connected to where you are, you might make the decision that I'm not even going to open those records because they don't fund where I am. So here, Vermilion Foundation, they like to fund in Vermilion County, likely, or in that area. If you're elsewhere, probably won't take a look. I want to show you a couple other quick tricks. If you want it, you can save everything. If you're in a rush and you just say, I want to see it all and look at it later, click this little box, go over here to save records. Don't save the list, save the records, and save everything. And it will email that whole record to yourself. What you can also do, and we do this for members if they have a large number of results, but if you're searching yourself, you can do this as well. You can export a list. That creates a CSV file that you can open as a spreadsheet and serve as a little bit of a tracking document for you. So if you're looking for a quick, ready-made way, exporting that list to a spreadsheet is a terrific thing that you can do, and it's a real quick way for you to keep track of the foundations you've looked at, but you always want to make sure that you save your search criteria. A couple other things I want to point out on this. If you're looking for grant makers located where you are, you would click on grant maker location, and you can narrow that down by state, by county, by zip code, or even congressional district. So you might be interested in grant makers that you hope to develop a personal one-on-one relationship with, or grant makers that you hope would do a site visit. So there are a number of reasons that you might be interested in thinking just about grant makers located in your area. And if that's the case, you would narrow that search down by grant maker location. Foundation Directory Online is like really any other database. It requires modifying your search. It requires practice. And whether you are here at our library and we're helping you with that, or even if you are at one of the other Foundation Center Funding Information Network locations, you'll find that librarians there are able to help you as well. So at this point, I think we can just see if you have any other questions about resources that you might be able to use to help you identify grant makers, help you build your list. No? I'm going to hand it back over to Lisa.
Okay. Thank you so much, Robin. I hope that this was useful. I know I learn a little more about the library and about this process every time I listen to you. Let's see, we did have a question from Janet. She asks, in Giving USA, what was the fourth category? Individual donations, foundations, bequests,
and corporate giving.
Yeah, so that was gifts from corporations.
Yep.
And maybe we can move, we'll see if we can move back a couple of slides so you can see that. Meanwhile, if there are any other questions, you want to type those quickly into the chat box, you can do that. Otherwise, I hope that you will visit us on our website. Again, that's myforefront.org. You can learn about our upcoming programs. You can see more information about the library and how to contact Robin and Marissa with any questions that you have about doing research here. Or you can contact any of us here at Forefront if you have questions about joining. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the rest of this lovely summer day, and we'll look forward to hearing from you soon.